When a billionaire black woman faces blatant prejudice from a flight crew who refuse to believe she owns the private jet, what unfolds is a story of resilience and poetic justice. From humiliation to triumph, her actions will leave everyone stunned. Let's dive into Victoria Reynolds' journey, a tale of empowerment, accountability, and breaking barriers. Victoria Reynolds, a 34-year-old self-made billionaire, stood beneath the crystal-clear Phoenix skies. The morning sun reflected off her vintage Cartier watch, a symbol of the relentless determination that had propelled her to the pinnacle of the artificial intelligence industry. Dressed in an impeccably tailored crimson suit, she radiated the quiet confidence that had become her trademark in Silicon Valley's competitive landscape. If you believe in standing up against discrimination in all its forms, take a moment to subscribe to Unfolded Stories. Only those who support prejudice would scroll past without joining our community of changemakers. Today's mission seemed straightforward: a crucial business meeting in Boston to finalize her company's latest acquisition. But for Victoria, even the most routine tasks often came with unexpected challenges. As she approached her private jet, a sleek Gulfstream G700 that represented both her success and her commitment to excellence, she noticed a cluster of uniformed crew members huddled nearby. Their whispered conversations and poorly concealed glances in her direction carried an unmistakable undercurrent of judgment. Leading the group was Captain Michael Anderson, a man whose rigid posture mirrored his deeply entrenched biases. His steel-gray eyes swept over Victoria, making no attempt to mask his skepticism. When she reached the foot of the jet stairs, he stepped forward with a smile that seemed carved from ice. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he said, his voice dripping with artificial courtesy. "This particular aircraft is reserved for VIP clients. Perhaps you've been misdirected to the wrong terminal." Victoria paused, her gaze level and unwavering. The early morning breeze carried the scent of jet fuel and prejudice, a familiar combination she'd encountered too many times before. "There's no misdirection, Captain Anderson," she replied, her voice carrying the weight of 1,000 similar confrontations. "I am the VIP you're waiting for, Victoria Reynolds." Behind her, Marcus Thompson, her chief of operations and trusted confidant for the past decade, tensed visibly. His 6'4" frame straightened as he prepared to intervene, but Victoria halted him with an almost imperceptible gesture. She'd learned long ago that some battles needed to be fought with precision rather than force. Before we continue with what happened next, ask yourself, if you believe in the power of storytelling to change hearts and minds, shouldn't you be part of this journey? Subscribe now to witness how this confrontation transforms into a movement for change. Anderson's expression shifted from dismissive to condescending, his lips curling into what he probably thought was a diplomatic smile. "Right," he drawled, drawing out the word like stretched taffy. "If you'll allow me to verify that information, you can wait comfortably in our premium lounge. It shouldn't take too long." The emphasis on his last words hung in the air like smoke, acrid and offensive. Victoria adjusted the sleeve of her suit jacket, a gesture that had become her equivalent of counting to 10. Without a word, she turned on her heel and headed toward the lounge, her Louboutin heels clicking against the polished concrete in a rhythm that matched her racing thoughts. This wasn't her first encounter with prejudice masked as protocol, and she knew it wouldn't be her last. But something about today felt different. Maybe it was the accumulated weight of similar incidents, or perhaps it was the recognition that her position now gave her the power to do more than just prove them wrong. She could change the system itself. If you believe in the importance of sharing stories that challenge systemic bias, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Together, we can amplify voices that deserve to be heard. Inside the premium lounge, Victoria sank into a hand-stitched Italian leather chair, the luxurious surroundings doing little to soften the familiar sting of discrimination. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic patterns across Brazilian marble floors, their brilliance a stark contrast to the darkness of prejudice that had followed her into this rarefied space. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, the Arizona desert stretched endlessly, its vast expanse a reminder of the boundaries she'd spent her life pushing past. If you believe in the power of perseverance in the face of adversity, take a moment to join our community. Only those who accept the status quo would choose to remain silent observers. Marcus paced near the windows, his reflection fragmenting across the treated glass designed to withstand the desert heat. His hands, usually steady from years of corporate negotiations, clenched and unclenched rhythmically. "Victoria," he began, his voice tight with controlled anger, "let me make some calls." "We can have the board of directors here within - No," Victoria interrupted, her voice carrying the same quiet authority that had helped her build Reynolds Innovations from a startup in her garage to a $50 billion tech empire. Sometimes, Marcus, the most powerful response is letting people reveal exactly who they are. Picking up her phone, she dialed her legal team, not for immediate intervention, but to set in motion a plan she'd been contemplating for months. This incident would become the catalyst for systematic change. As she spoke with her chief counsel, her voice remained steady, each word carefully chosen to lay the groundwork for what was to come. If you believe in the importance of documenting injustice to create lasting change, subscribe now. Let's build a community that stands witness to transformation. Through the lounge's panoramic windows, Victoria and Marcus watched the crew's behavior unfold. Captain Anderson and his team made no attempt to hide their amusement, their exaggerated gestures and barely contained laughter echoing their assumptions about power, privilege, and who deserved to possess either. The minutes crawled by like hours. Victoria used this time to make several more calls to her PR team, to her board of directors, and to several journalists who had covered her rise in the tech industry. Each conversation was brief, purposeful, and would prove instrumental in what was about to unfold. An hour and 17 minutes later, Victoria had counted every second. The lounge door swung open. Captain Anderson strode in, his previous smugness now amplified by what he clearly thought was confirmed suspicion. "Unfortunately," he announced, failing to hide his satisfaction, "we've been unable to verify your claims about the jet's ownership. Perhaps you'd like me to call you a car service." Victoria rose from her chair with deliberate grace, smoothing her crimson suit with manicured hands that had once coded software for 18 hours straight. "Actually, Captain Anderson," she replied, her voice carrying the weight of countless boardroom victories, "we should discuss this on the tarmac. The lighting is better there for the cameras. Before we continue, ask yourself, if you believe in holding power accountable, shouldn't you be part of this story's journey? Subscribe now to witness justice unfold." Anderson's confidence wavered for the first time, his steel-gray eyes narrowing in confusion. "Cameras?" Victoria swept past him, Marcus falling into step behind her with the practiced coordination of years of partnership. The clicking of her heels against marble transformed into determined steps across concrete as they emerged onto the sun-baked tarmac. A small crowd had gathered, ground crew, other pilots, airport staff, drawn by the unusual tension surrounding the Gulfstream G700. Standing before the assembled group, Victoria reached into her Hermes briefcase and withdrew a leather portfolio. "Captain Anderson," she began, her voice carrying across the now silent tarmac, "let me share some documentation with you. First, here's the jet's registration, listing Reynolds Aviation LLC as the owner." She handed him the first document, its official seals glinting in the desert sun. "And here's the incorporation documents for Reynolds Aviation LLC, a wholly owned subsidiary of Reynolds Innovations." Another document joined the first. "Of course," she continued, her voice taking on a tone of professional courtesy that made Anderson's earlier condescension seem clumsy by comparison, "you might want to cross-reference these with the public trading documents of Reynolds Innovations, the company I founded 12 years ago." She gestured to Marcus, who opened his tablet to display the company's current stock price, hovering near $450 per share. The growing crowd shifted uncomfortably as Anderson's face cycled through shades of red. But Victoria wasn't finished. With precise movements, she withdrew her pilot's license from the portfolio. "You might also be interested to know that I'm rated to fly this exact aircraft model. I earned my certification 3 years ago, though I prefer to have a professional crew handle operations so I can work during flights." If you believe in the importance of breaking stereotypes and challenging assumptions, take a moment to subscribe. Only those comfortable with prejudice would choose not to witness what happens next. The silence that fell over the tarmac was absolute. Even the distant sound of jets seemed muted, as if the very atmosphere was holding its breath. Victoria stood perfectly still, her silhouette framed by the massive Gulf Stream behind her, creating an image that would later be described by one witness as a masterclass in poise under pressure. Anderson's attempt to speak came out as a stammer. "Ms. Reynolds, we didn't." "You didn't what, Captain?" Victoria's voice was calm, but carried across the tarmac with crystal clarity. "You didn't think it was possible for someone like me to own this aircraft? You didn't consider checking the actual ownership records before making assumptions? Or you didn't expect to be held accountable for discriminatory behavior? Let me ask our viewers, if you believe in the power of holding discrimination accountable, shouldn't you be part of this movement? Subscribe now to see how this confrontation catalyzes real change." Victoria turned to address the gathered crowd, her voice taking on the same compelling tone that had captivated audiences at tech conferences worldwide. "What happened here today isn't unique. It's not isolated. It's a symptom of systemic biases that persist in aviation, in tech, in every industry. The difference today is that we're going to document it, address it, and use it as a catalyst for change." As if on cue, several professional cameras appeared at the edge of the crowd. Victoria's PR team had worked quickly. The entire confrontation would be captured, edited, and shared with precision timing for maximum impact. "Captain Anderson," Victoria continued, turning back to face him, "you and your crew are relieved of duty, effective immediately. My legal team will be in touch regarding the discriminatory treatment I experienced today. Please gather your belongings and exit the aircraft." The crew's departure from the jet was captured in its entirety. Their slumped shoulders and hurried movements a stark contrast to their earlier arrogance. As they walked away, Victoria ascended the stairs to her aircraft, stopping at the top to turn and address the crowd one final time. If you believe that documented evidence of discrimination deserves to be shared, subscribe now. Help us ensure that stories like this reach those who need to hear them most. Within hours of Victoria's confrontation at Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport, the meticulously captured footage began its journey across social media platforms. The video opened with her calm ascension of the jet stairs, a powerful image that would soon become a symbol of resistance against discrimination. But it was what happened next that truly captured the world's attention. If you believe in the power of truth to spark change, take a moment to join our community. Only those who prefer shadows to light would choose not to witness what unfolded next. Victoria's team had released 3 versions of the video, a raw 2-minute clip that spread like wildfire across social media, a detailed 15-minute documentation that news networks clamored to broadcast, and a 45-minute comprehensive analysis that would later be used in corporate training sessions worldwide. Each version told the same story from different angles, highlighting the subtle and overt ways discrimination manifests in professional settings. Hashtags began trending globally, #KnowHerName, #ReynoldsRevolution, and #CheckYourAssumptions dominated social media conversations. The incident sparked discussions in boardrooms, classrooms, and households across the globe. But Victoria wasn't satisfied with merely starting a conversation. She was determined to transform it into action. If you believe that awareness without action is incomplete, subscribe now. Together, we'll witness how one moment of confrontation becomes a movement for change. 3 days after the incident, Victoria called a press conference at Reynolds Innovation's headquarters in Silicon Valley. The auditorium was packed with journalists, industry leaders, and aviation professionals. As she took the stage, wearing a powerful white suit that contrasted sharply with the deep blue backdrop, the room fell silent. "What happened at Phoenix Sky Harbor wasn't just about me," Victoria began, her voice carrying the same quiet authority that had commanded the tarmac days earlier. "It wasn't just about one crew's prejudice or one company's failure to train its employees properly. It's about a systemic issue that persists across industries, affecting countless individuals who may not have the platform or resources to fight back." The cameras flashed continuously as she unveiled her most ambitious project yet, the Reynolds Initiative for Aviation Equity, or RISE. With an initial investment of $500 million from her personal fortune, RISE would address discrimination in aviation through a comprehensive three-pronged approach. Before we delve into the details of RISE, let me ask our viewers, if you believe in the power of systematic change, shouldn't you be part of this historical moment? Subscribe now to witness the transformation of an industry. First, Victoria announced, RISE will establish the largest scholarship program in aviation history, specifically targeting underrepresented groups. We're committing to funding flight training for 1,000 new pilots annually, with additional support for maintenance technicians, air traffic controllers, and aviation management professionals. The auditorium erupted in applause, but Victoria raised her hand for silence. She wasn't finished. Second, we're launching a partnership program with major airlines and private aviation companies. Those who commit to our enhanced diversity training programs and hiring initiatives will receive preferential rates on our new aviation software suite. She paused, allowing the strategic brilliance of linking social change to business incentives sink in. Reynolds Innovation's aviation software was considered industry standard, used by over 80% of commercial carriers. Finally, she continued, we're establishing the Aviation Accountability Database, a public record of verified discrimination incidents and their resolutions. Transparency will be our tool for transformation. If you believe that accountability drives change, take a moment to subscribe. Only those who profit from opacity would choose to look away now. The impact of Victoria's announcement was immediate and far-reaching. Within weeks, major airlines scrambled to partner with RISE. The first wave of scholarship applications overwhelmed the system, requiring Reynolds Innovations to upgrade their servers to handle the volume. But it was the personal stories that began emerging that truly demonstrated the initiative's impact. Former flight crew members who had experienced discrimination began sharing their stories. Among them was Janet Chin, a former pilot who had left aviation after years of subtle discrimination. Watching Ms. Reynolds stand her ground gave me the courage to come back, she told reporters. Now, through RISE, I'm not just returning to flying, I'm becoming a flight instructor to help shape the next generation. As for Captain Anderson and his crew, their story took an unexpected turn. Rather than simply accepting their dismissal as a career-ending moment, Victoria offered them an alternative path. Redemption, she would later write in her best-selling memoir, is as important as accountability. If you believe in the power of redemption to strengthen justice, subscribe now. Let's explore how even those who initially stood against progress can become its strongest advocates. Anderson and his crew were given a choice. They could fade into aviation history as examples of discrimination, or they could undergo intensive training and become part of the solution. To many people's surprise, they chose the latter. 6 months later, Anderson stood on the same stage where Victoria had announced RISE, his voice shaking as he addressed a room of new aviation students. I was wrong, he began, the simplicity of his statement carrying more weight than any elaborate apology could. My actions that day came from biases so deeply ingrained that I didn't even recognize them. Thanks to the RISE program, I've learned to not only recognize these biases, but to actively combat them. Today, I teach others to do the same. The transformation of the aviation industry continued at an unprecedented pace. Within the first year, RISE had funded flight training for 1,200 pilots from underrepresented groups, partnered with 47 major airlines and 156 private aviation companies, documented and resolved 324 discrimination incidents, created employment opportunities for over 3,000 aviation professionals, established mentorship programs across 200 airports. If you believe that numbers tell only part of the story, subscribe now to hear the human impact of these changes. Victoria's private jet became a flying symbol of transformation. She implemented a rotating crew program, giving newly licensed pilots from the RISE program opportunities to gain experience on one of the most advanced aircraft in private aviation. The same tarmac where she had faced discrimination became a regular launch point for RISE initiatives. 2 years after the incident, Victoria returned to Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport for the inauguration of the RISE Training Center, a state-of-the-art facility built on the very spot where she had confronted Captain Anderson. The center would go on to train thousands of aviation professionals, each one carrying forward the lesson that had sparked its creation: assumptions and prejudices have no place in the skies. If you believe that legacy is built through lasting change, take a moment to subscribe. Together, we'll continue to document the stories that reshape our world. As Victoria stood at the podium during the center's opening ceremony, she looked out at the diverse faces in the crowd: veteran pilots, new trainees, industry leaders, and former skeptics turned advocates. The Arizona sun painted the sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple, a reminder of that morning 2 years ago when discrimination had tried to keep her grounded. "The sky has never belonged to any one group," she concluded, her words carrying across the hushed audience. "It belongs to all of us. And when we rise above our prejudices, when we challenge our assumptions, when we open doors instead of closing them, that's when we truly soar." If you believe in the power of stories to change hearts and minds, subscribe to Unfolded Stories now. Because somewhere, someone needs to hear that change is possible, that justice can prevail, and that the sky truly is the limit. As the sun set on the new RISE Training Center, its glass walls reflecting the desert sky, Victoria's story had become more than just a viral moment or a corporate initiative. It had become a testament to the power of turning prejudice into progress, of transforming humiliation into hope, and of using privilege to break down barriers for others. The next time you look up at a plane crossing the sky, remember Victoria Reynolds and the RISE Initiative. Remember that change happens not just through grand gestures, but through the daily commitment to challenging our assumptions and standing firm in the face of prejudice. If you believe that every person deserves to reach for the sky without barriers, subscribe now. Together, we'll continue to unfold stories that inspire, challenge, and change our world. Because in the end, the greatest heights we can reach are those we help others achieve.